Hello, hello. It's me, your Smarties Lyft driver, and we got to do us a rant. And this one's probably pretty important, I think, for our nation, for each and every one of us. God help us all. But our very unpopular president has a piece of legislation on his desk. He daylighted it to Congress and the Senate and majority and minority leaders. And their comments were, we really don't think we can support this because years ago it was discussed and it might be unconstitutional. I believe that was the gist of it. My comment to that is, gentlemen, we didn't ask your opinion. This thing needs to happen. Your job is to do the people's bidding. That's why you're there, not for us to do what you've decided we're going to do. And that's how far turned around our representative republic has gotten turned. Our arrogant elected officials have forgotten the fact that they are there to do what the people instruct them to do, not what they want to do, and not to stay there and to continue to fill their pockets and to steal our country and sell our country. That is not what a representative republic is. And it's not what public servants do. And public servants are those that we elect to do our bidding. We are a republic, which means we're a nation of laws. And we instruct our elected officials what laws we want. And it's their job to make them happen. Unfortunately, they haven't been doing their job for some decades now. And we've been asleep at the switch. We've allowed it to happen. And if we don't wake up and start to turn this thing around, this country will not be anything that we recognize in the not too distant future. So term limits hasn't been talked about for about 30 years. It was the first Bush, George Herbert Walker, that was a platform plank that he had. And we had a unified House, Senate, and executive office. And I believe other than some other mistakes, President Bush made, was thinking that he would shelve term limits until the second term. I think our current president needs to work right now to enact term limits before we have the next election. There's talk that, maybe a number of seats are lost, and then the House is not unified. The House and Senate are not unified with the executive office. If that happens, neither will term limits. And this shouldn't be up for debate. If we the people start to hear them squawking about, term limits, anything other than, yes, we're going to make this happen, we need to go absolutely nuts. Because if it doesn't happen, what happens to us as a nation is not anything we even want to think about or talk about. So, term limits in my opinion, should happen at all levels. And I'll use a quote from John Adams. It should be a privilege and honor, but a duty for Americans to go to Washington with information and message from their neighborhoods and communities to enter into debate and or enact into law when deemed necessary. And that message was to go to Washington and their state capital. So it needs to happen, we know, at the federal level and at the state level. With the growth of the nation, county governments become very important, as has local government. You used to be able to get something done at local government. You used to be able to talk to an elected official in local government. In the big cities anymore, you have as much chance of talking to an elected official as you would talking to the President of the United States, to the Pope, or to, God forbid, a major celebrity. So at any rate, our voices need to be heard, and they need to be heard soon. We should begin to send the message to Washington now. And so it's not left off the docket. So it's not ignored. So it's not avoided. And so it's not enacted into law. And that's something that we need to make happen and need to make happen fast. So I implore each and every one of you to pick up a phone on your lunch break every day. Call a congressman, call your local senators, send emails to the president. It has to happen, and it has to get started happening now, or it's going to pass us by. And the consequences for that will be very dire. So, my opinion, agree or disagree, but this is a very important piece of legislation that has to happen, so we can move on to other things like election reform. And it's another rant. I'll do an election reform rant, just an idea and some thoughts. You guys are smart enough to figure out where to go with things, how to make things happen, and what's right. That I know because of the conversations that I've had. So, term limits, term limits, term limits, term limits. That's enough of a rant for tonight. But thanks for what you guys are going to do for our country, and hopefully I'll see you guys out on the road, and we'll do this again soon. Thank you. God bless. Make it a good day, and make term limits happen.